Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be once again going over Tropical Storm Dorian. So if you do go on to enjoy today's video, do consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. I just did wake up. It is actually the afternoon, but you know how school just kind of passes you out. So a little bit of a later upload, but it is fine. I do have the latest information for everyone, so let's go ahead and get into it. So right here you can see that we do, here's Tropical Storm Dorian, as you can see on the screen. You can see this the center of the storm. You can see where we do have a lot of those big thunderstorms. Pretty much anywhere across the eastern side, especially, we have these big thunderstorms that are taking place. So this is not very uncommon. This always does happen. You can see how we do have a lot of these thunderstorms. So we have a lot of thunderstorms that are developed. The winds are around 60 miles per hour, which is pretty strong, and they are moving towards the Lesser Antilles. It's about to go over, them very soon tonight, and it's not looking good for people around there. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and go to the National Hurricane Center. We're gonna start with the cone. So usually here, if you never saw the cone before, this is just anywhere where the system could go. And pretty much, it's still out in the ocean, hasn't really made landfall yet. And we are expecting to see a tropical, well, we do have a tropical storm warning in place for a lot of the central Lesser Antilles, some parts of the Lesser Antilles. And you can even see behind that tropical storm warning, we have some hurricane warnings, also hurricane watches across some of those areas in the Lesser Antilles. So we do have hurricane watches in place for some areas across there. And you can see how definitely it should become a hurricane by your Tuesday. And then it'll be at Puerto Rico around your Wednesday, where we do have a tropical storm watch in place right now. And then we are expecting it to move somewhere around Dominican Republic and Haiti, or maybe north of the Dominican Republic, and will be a storm by Thursday, is what they're saying right now. And you can see how by your Friday we're in the Bahamas with the tropical storm still, and then on your Saturday we're still in a tropical storm in the Bahamas. And then at the very end of the cone, this is extended from yesterday, Florida is finally in the cone. So pretty much the storm could end up going this way and going into the Gulf. It could do this way and do a lot of what the models are saying, or it also could do this. So they're all there's still a wide area of where this could go, but we are finally slimming it down a little bit and kind of getting a better idea of what is going on. Okay, if we were to go ahead and go to the wind speed probabilities really quick, I'm not really going to read it straight off, but pretty much we have a really good chance for tropical storm winds across the Lesser Antilles throughout tonight and parts of tomorrow. And Puerto Rico, we have a pretty good chance, pretty likely. Same way in the Dominican Republic. And the Bahamas, we have a 30 to 50 chance, still pretty likely. Once we get longer, once we get a little closer and more determined. So really, once you get past here, we're going to have to look a little bit more into later on, maybe tomorrow and the day after that. But if you're anywhere across the islands, you can kind of get a good idea of what's going on by the key at the bottom. Okay, so we're just going to look at one more thing. We're going to go to the arrival time of winds. And you can see how we are expected to see these winds arrive pretty much right now, and maybe until in a few hours across the Lesser Antilles. So we are expected to be seeing winds almost right now across the Lesser Antilles start. And if we were to keep going, around your Tuesday to Wednesday, we should be seeing, by your Tuesday night, we should be seeing some stuff to creep across Puerto Rico. And then especially by your Tuesday night, late Tuesday night and your early morning, on your Wednesday, Puerto Rico should be in those winds. And then moving into the Dominican Republic and Haiti, there is a chance by our Wednesday night we could be seeing some winds there too. Now, these could be tropical storm force or hurricane force, so that's why I am saying just winds. But once we do get across your Thursday, we are expecting them to finally make their way across maybe even parts of Cuba, the Bahamas, or north of the Bahamas, and then across your Friday, still in northern Bahamas, central Bahamas, parts of Cuba, north of the Bahamas, and then later on it could start arriving in Florida. So by the end of this week, we could already be seeing something happening across Florida. So you can see once we get this far out, we really are gonna have to see where this does go, but right now it's looking like it could make a Florida landfall. So we're gonna go and take a look at that, and you can see how we are expecting this to do. A lot of these are pretty together, which is actually pretty surprising. And you can see how that we are expecting a southern Florida towards central Florida landfall right now. A few models still are going off into the Gulf before it hits Florida. Some are still taking it off into near the southeast coast. But most of them are taking it to hit a landfall in Florida, and then either it going back into the Gulf for a brief moment of time and then hit the Alabama coast or the panhandle of Florida, or just have it, some models even have it, like the European has it doing this, so going up the coast. So that is one thing that could be happening, which you will see in these few model runs. So you can see in the GFS ensembles, everything's pretty together with this. Some of the models were down here yesterday, and they've changed finally. I knew that was not going to happen, so I really was scared of showing those yesterday just because I knew it wouldn't happen. But today they're actually getting kind of lined up, and you can see how some of them are actually going a little more north this time. And you can see how this has it making landfall in Florida, pretty much every single model, except for a few keeping it into the Gulf and making landfall in Texas. But most of them have it hitting Florida, going back into the Gulf, and maybe venturing a little longer and making landfall near Mississippi and the Alabama state line. And then it's anyone's guess after that, somewhere into the southeast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. Anywhere after that is where this could be going. We still are going to have to see. Okay, as we do move into your CMC ensembles, these are way different than what we are looking at. So we cannot rule these out. These actually don't look too off. So we are going to have to look, because these are this is a different idea that definitely is an idea and could definitely happen. This is on that cone where it did go north of a lot of the Dominican Republic. So if we were to keep going through here, you can see most of the models miss Florida and just go up here and make landfall somewhere around the Georgia coast, South Carolina coast, the North Carolina coast. We really can't see exactly where, but you can see that black line is a good indication of where it could be going. And you can see how it does make landfall northern Florida near Georgia, maybe South Carolina. It's like right up there. And you can see a lot of the models even do take it somewhere into the Gulf. It's very scattered, but some do actually take it into the Gulf around Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas. Some take it near Mexico. And others even make landfall in Florida and then cross back into the Gulf. So this is a lot like the other models, but adds a little bit more uncertainty to it. So just when we thought, oh, okay, we kind of do have a good idea, this happens and we have to backtrack and kind of think about this again. So this is a model that really does make me question what a lot of the other models are saying, but these are the CMC ensembles. These aren't always the best to use, but you can see how a lot of them are together, and there's a lot of them definitely. So we're going to have to see what does happen. That is a really good possibility. And if I don't know if this will, nah, let's not do it. I was going to put them all next to each other, but I think it'll be fine. I think everybody did get a good look. Okay, so right before we do go on a little bit, we're going to go ahead and look at the spaghetti models for the intensity, and you can see how a lot of these models are a lot together except for that one going into the Atlantic. Also, Tropical Depression 6 has formed. We are expecting it to make landfall in Nova Scotia sometime soon. We should stay in a tropical storm, maybe a hurricane, but we're pretty sure a tropical storm. Just did want to cover that a little bit. No U.S. impact right now. We do think in Nova Scotia landfall could happen, or it could miss Nova Scotia and go into another part of near there. So it's going to be somewhere near Nova Scotia. It should not affect the U.S. is what pretty much we got to worry about. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get back into the storm, and pretty much you can see this is where these how intense the models do think we are going to get. A lot of them do take it up into that Category 1 strength. And you can see how some of them go a little higher. One takes it into Category 3, and then there's quite a few models do take it up to your Category 2. You know, I mean, that's a considerable amount. It's not a huge amount, but a lot of models yesterday were saying nothing, barely category 1 last time we looked at this, but now we're getting really high up, and you can see how a lot of the models do get around here somewhere. So we are close to that category 2, so we are going to have to watch and see if this does reach category 2 or maybe even more. But right now a lot of models are sticking with category 1, pushing category 2, so we will have to see how that does change throughout tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to we are going to go ahead and go to windy.com, and you can see how this storm is right here in the Lesser Antilles right now. Most of the heavy rain is on the eastern side of the storm, so once the first half does pass you, it's still bad, but it's not the worst part. And you can see most of the winds are actually on the northern side of the storm. So if you're anywhere in the northern side of the storm, you should be a little bit more concerned. So if you're south of the storm, you shouldn't worry as much. But we are going to have to see how this does develop. But right now it's looking like this does happen a lot, where we do see most of our moisture and our winds on the northeast side of the storm. But right now we're going to go ahead and go back to the rain and the thunder. And if we were to go to our Tuesday around 8 a.m., you can see it makes landfall. So very, very quickly it moves out of your Bridgetown area and moves into your Castries, Kingstown, Fort de France, Roselle area across the Lesser Antilles. And you can see the winds are really intense, especially across Castries. And you can see how those winds have really shifted to parts of the northeastern side, but really a lot of the eastern side. So it's got a little bit more put together. The storm has at this time, and wind gusts are still pretty high up there. If we were to go on to your Tuesday afternoon, it's moving out. We do still have a lot of that moisture across a lot of the Lesser Antilles, and some is approaching parts of the most northern Lesser Antilles, and some moisture is starting to get to a lot of the Puerto Rico area. Okay, if we're to move into your Wednesday at 4 a.m., this is when we are expecting it to become a hurricane or get really close to become a hurricane. If we were to look back at this, you can see by our Wednesday, we are expecting a hurricane. So this is when it should be a hurricane. And you can see it looks really well put together, and it looks pretty scary. If we were to look at the wind gusts, you can see some wind gusts are still in the 50s. But usually it does say this when it comes to this kind of stuff, and it is up there. This is just one forecast model, and it can't do the best with the winds, but it's pretty good with the track. I do trust this track pretty well with the European model. If we were to go on to your Wednesday at 12, you can see it's approaching the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And then by your Wednesday night, it's getting really close to making landfall. And you can see this one brings a lot of heavy rains to western Puerto Rico. Really bad rains, because you are on that slight very end of that eastern storm. The worst of it is right offshore. If that were to shift a little bit east, we could have a lot of more problems. But you can see by Thursday at 7 a.m., it really didn't make a definite landfall. It kind of went in between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. But you can see between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, we have a lot of moisture. And usually what we have a lot of those mountainous regions, so we can expect some landslides and really heavy rains. That is going to be one of our worst impacts, a lot of those rains and those landslides. But you can see on your Friday, as this does move, you can see it's near the Bahamas. This does not take it on that track near Cuba, the specific model. But this one does take it north of the Bahamas. And you can see how it does intersect with the Bahamas and by your Saturday. And then by your Sunday, we having it making landfall across Florida. So this is not very unlikely. This is expected in a lot of the models right now. This is kind of what we are expecting, possible landfall in Florida. And you can see, if this were to make landfall right here where it does say, it's going to be around Palm Bay, St. Cloud, Cocoa, Deltona, south of Daytona Beach, north of Vero Beach near Port St. Lucie. I don't know what I'm saying. But you can see on your Sunday it does move inland. Then by your Monday, it does already take that northeastern turn, but it sticks in Florida for a while. It does take a while to get out of there. You can see it even gets in parts of Georgia and by your Tuesday, and then it just sticks a lot of moisture across Florida and Georgia for days. So just expect to see a lot of flooding, especially across Florida and southern Georgia. But you can see how the storm looks very unorganized by your Wednesday. But usually, this model is kind of starting to try to bring it a little bit offshore. You can see the worst of it. But by this time, we're just going to have a lot of damage done with their rain accumulation. So if we were to go only to next Wednesday, now we could be seeing more in Florida and Georgia as we do go on. Pretty much of the whole southeast, including South Carolina, North Carolina, depending on where this does go. But we're going to start with the Lesser Antilles. Throughout tonight and parts of tomorrow, we should be expecting around 3 to 5 inches. And as it doesn't strengthen to a hurricane, you can see how this does bring about 2-3 inches to Puerto Rico. Eastern parts of the Dominican Republic, we have 1 inch, and then you can see we have some 3 inches, so maybe 1 to 3 inches right now. But you can see kind of where that eastern side of the storm. So our center is located somewhere around here, and you can see how along that eastern side we have our worst of our rains. And you can see how that does follow till the Turks and Caicos. It's right north of you. And then once we enter the Bahamas, there's 5-inch rain totals, 6 inches in some parts. And you can see once it intercepts with Florida, pretty much all of Florida, you're in that really bad rain, especially for that central Florida to northeastern Florida area. Even Miami, you're in some bad rains. You can see 8 inches was just there. And you can see how 13 inches, so maybe over a foot of rain, we could be seeing in some areas. Savannah, Georgia, you're in that 3 inches. Parts of coastal South Carolina, 2 inches. And so on this model, it was starting to move a little bit north. So that's why that storm is trying to fade that rain into it. But you can see if you live in Jacksonville, Daytona, Palm Bay, Tampa, even Tampa, even though you're on the western coast, it does not matter with the storm. Orlando, where a lot of people are going to be, into your Gainesville area, Port St. Lucie, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble. I know how to pronounce it. I just keep thinking it's another name. You need to be ready for a lot of flooding and maybe even some bad winds. So anywhere I did circle, you need to be concerned about a lot of flooding and bad winds. We could be seeing up to a foot of rain in some isolated spots. And as this does move north, we'll have more concerns across the southeast, and we will have to see where that does go. Okay, guys, I hope everyone did enjoy today's video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. Another update to come sometime around this time tomorrow, just because I do like to wait till the 5 p.m. update, since I do get off school around 3 anyway. So if you did enjoy today's video, once again, I do hope y'all enjoyed it. Leave a like down below, subscribe, and I will see everyone in the next video. Have an amazing day.